Hello and welcome to this edition of On the Scene. I'm your host, Frank Poulin, and today we're going to be talking to the Registrar's Office and the Electoral Board about that most important of days in November, the elections. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're here now with Susan Saunders, the General Registrar for the City of Suffolk, and Beverly Outlaw, the Chairman of the Electoral Board. Hello, ladies. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Now, the big day is coming up in November. The election process. Now let's start a little bit with what is on the ballot for the fall elections, just so people know exactly what they're voting for.
Well, let's start with the constitutional amendment that folks are going to be voting for. And the question is, and I'm going to read this because I want to remember it correctly, is 6A of Article 10 of Taxation and Finance of the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to exempt from taxation the real property of the surviving spouse of any member of the armed forces of the United States who was killed in action, where the surviving spouse occupies the real property as is, or her principal place of residence, and has not remarried. So the widow or widower of someone killed in action can stay in the place they've shared with that spouse until they remarry.
Okay.
And without a change in their taxation.
Okay, and this is on the ballot for people to actually vote on?
This is on the ballot to be voted in the November election.
Okay, for the Virginia's Constitution.
Exactly.
All right.
And we also have a number of candidates. And Susan, you tell us who's on the ballot for that.
Participating in the November 4th election, we'll have a city council in 4 of the 7 boroughs, as well as a school board. Now, in the Chuckatuck borough, which consists of Ebenezer, Chuckatuck, Kings Fork, and Hill Point, we have Michael Duman. He is the incumbent, and he's running unopposed.
Okay.
In the Cypress borough, which that includes White Marsh, John F. Kennedy, it includes Nansemond River, and it also includes Shoulders Hill. The candidates for that office is Charles Brown, who is the incumbent, Leroy Bennett, and Clinton Jenkins.
Okay.
In the Holy Neck borough, which consists of the Kilby's Mill Precinct, Holland Precinct, and Lake Cahoon, the candidates are Jeffrey Gardy, who is the incumbent, as well as Timothy Tim Johnson. In the Suffolk borough, which includes Lakeside, Old Town, Elephants Fork, West Haven, Wilroy, and Hollywood precincts, the candidates are Charles Parr, who is the incumbent, as well as Donald Goldberg and Carrie Holmes.
Okay.
Now for school board and the Chuckatuck borough, the candidates running are Linda Bouchard, who is the incumbent, as well as Dorothy Bland Gamble. For the Cypress Borough School Board, Lorraine Skeeter is the incumbent, and she's running unopposed. In the Holy Neck borough, Mr. Enoch E.C. Copeland is the incumbent, and he's running unopposed.
Okay.
For the Suffolk borough for school board, the candidates running are Michael Dobransky, he is the incumbent, and Thelma Hinton.
Okay.
Now we're also going to have a special election during the November 4th election, and this is for school board, the Sleepy Hole borough.
Okay.
And that position was vacated by Diane Foster.
Okay.
She resigned halfway through her candidacy, and we'll have a special election. Now we already have paperwork, and we already know 2 of the candidates. Now those 2 are David Mitnick and James Perkinson.
Okay.
I would like for the citizens to know that the deadline for filing the required paperwork to be considered as a candidate is August 15th.
It's coming up fast.
That is, it's a Friday, August 15th at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So for those who wish to be considered or be on the ballot, run as a candidate for school board in the Sleepy Hole borough, they would need to get their required paperwork in by Friday, August the 15th.
Okay. And now who does that paperwork go to? How do they get that started?
It would be submitted to our office.
Okay.
If anyone has a question in regard to the proper paperwork or the forms, they would please call our office. We would be glad to supply that information to them. We're also available on the website, as well as the State Board of Elections website.
All right.
And that is www.sbe.virginia.gov.
Okay, great.
And that's the local offices. We also have United States Senate,
Okay.
and that would be Mark Warner, Democrat. Ed Gillespie, and he's Republican, and Robert Sarvis, the Libertarian.
Okay.
And we'll also have United States House of Representatives, and that's Elliot Foss, Democrat, Randy Forbes, Republican, and Bo Brown is the Libertarian.
Okay.
So we have quite a few things on the ballot this time.
Yeah,
in
it's definitely not
November.
a small election. It's still
Correct.
a big one.
Correct.
Now, for the voters out there, has anything, and I know at times things, different rules, regulations change, have there been updates in the election process, and what does that mean for voters or those who need to register to vote?
Well, let me first say that some of the voters will experience new voting equipment.
Okay.
The Electoral Board has been in the process of updating our old equipment because it doesn't conform to the current state and federal guidelines.
Oh, really? Okay.
The state and federal guidelines say that we have to have equipment that allows paper ballots to be counted and that they have to leave a paper trail. And our current machines do not do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we will replace some of that equipment in precincts this election and hopefully have all of the equipment replaced by the presidential election
Okay.
in 2016. But the precincts that will have the new equipment this election, the November election, will be the Driver Precinct,
Okay.
the Kings Fork Precinct, the Kilby's Mill Precinct, the Lakeside Precinct, and what we call the Central Absentee Voting Precinct,
Okay.
which is right here in this office.
Okay.
And that's for folks who can't vote on the day of the election, but come in prior to the election to vote in person.
Okay. And are there certain rules regarding that and regulations that they need to know prior to?
For voting
Absentee.
Yeah, Susan, the cutoff date for beginning to vote absentee this year.
Absentee voting begins September 19th,
Okay.
and that is a Friday, September 19th. That's when people are welcome to come into the office and vote in person by absentee, or they may apply by mail.
Okay.
It's a two-step process. They would have to fill out an absentee ballot application form, and that lists various reasons for them not being able to be at their polling place on Election Day.
Okay.
They would submit that to us. We would either mail the ballot to them upon receipt of the application, or if they're doing it in person in our office, they would just fill out the form and we would be able to process it then and there, and they would be able to vote the same day.
Oh, great. Okay.
So, and that process would be here in our office at 440 Market Street in Suffolk.
Okay. Now, I know a big topic kind of in the news lately has been photo IDs. And can you kind of talk a little bit about that and what voters need to expect with regard to voter IDs?
Right. A new law was passed that as of July 1st of this year, that voters had to have a photo ID for their identification in order to vote.
Okay.
Now, the usual photo ID that people have are their driver's license.
Yes.
But there are a number of other options that people can use as photo IDs. And Susan, you want to go over those? And especially tell them about the new process for getting a voter ID at this office?
Yes, certainly. This law also applies to people that are voting in person.
Okay.
So if you come in person, you will need to have a proper form of acceptable photo ID. That would be in the form of a driver's license, a valid Virginia driver's
Okay.
license. It would also be in the form of a DMV-issued identification photo card.
Okay.
It would also be a United States valid passport, a government photo identification, or an employee-issued photo identification card. It would also include a student, college, or university photo student identification card. And that would be, the issuer would still have to be, it would have to be an institution of higher education in a locality in Virginia.
Okay.
And of course, it would also include the Virginia photo voter identification card. These cards can be obtained in any registrar's office throughout the Commonwealth. We here in our office are equipped with a camera, and we also have a signature pad.
Okay.
So for those people who do not have an acceptable form of identification, and I just named some of those just now, are welcome to come into our office It's a free of charge. They don't
Okay,
have to
great.
pay anything. They must be a registered voter.
Okay.
So they must be a registered voter. We would be able to take their picture.
Mm-hmm.
They would sign the signature pad, and then their photo ID card would be sent to them. So they would have it on Election Day. If there are any questions regarding this, I welcome phone calls or inquiries as to just how to obtain that. We also have, for the future consideration, mobile unit. So we would be able to go to outreach localities.
Oh, that's great.
And in fact, the electoral board has discussed that, and we're, in the process of determining the locations of the mobile units.
Oh, so you'd actually go out into the communities and
Correct.
take their photos and get them registered or get their IDs so they could vote.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
that's
Now,
great.
this card is only usable for voting purposes
Okay.
only. So it's an identification card that has their photo on it, and they will be able to present it at their polling site, or if they came in person to vote here in our office.
Okay, great. Now, what are the deadlines for registering to vote, either in person, and we already kind of went over the absentee, but certainly, in person here, what are those deadlines that are so important, just so people can make sure they get out to their polling place and they can vote?
Yes. We have a deadline of October 14th, that is a Tuesday, to register so that they would be able to vote in the November 4th election, or to change their voting status, and that would include a change of address.
Okay.
It would also include a change of name. So they would have up until October the 14th. Now, to mail a ballot to someone, the cutoff is October the 28th. That's
Okay.
also a Tuesday. So the last day that we mail out an absentee ballot is actually Tuesday, October 28th.
Okay.
So we would have to have the person's application in by that day in order to mail the ballot out by that day. The last day to vote in person here in our office is Saturday, November 1st.
Oh, wow,
And
okay.
we also will be open October the 25th is a Saturday from 8:30 to 4:30, as well as November 1st. And that would be 8:30 to 4:30.
Okay.
So, and again, as far as absentee voting begins on Friday, September 19th.
Okay, that's great. Now,
Lots of dates to remember.
yeah, I know, my goodness, and we'll certainly let our viewers
Yes.
know. But you mentioned that the website of the State Board of Elections. That certainly helps them keep track of those dates.
Certainly,
and
yes.
your website definitely for the registrar's office helps keep track of that as well.
Yes.
Now, say I guess a person who has just moved to Suffolk, but may not know that they're still registered and they have to re-register in Suffolk, correct?
They would. They
Okay.
would need to change their information, and if they had any questions at all, of course, call our office. But they can check online
Oh,
at the
can they?
State Board
Okay.
of Elections website, and they can actually look themselves up.
Oh, they just type in their name and
Absolutely.
there it is.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
excellent.
Yes.
Now, I guess the day of, now we're talking kind of, everyone's gotten registered to vote, we're there, we got our IDs, we're at the polling place. What can we kind of expect the day of?
You want me to take that?
That's fine.
Okay. When a voter comes to the poll, what they can expect is to be greeted at the somewhere near the door by an officer of election
Okay.
who will check to make sure that they are in the right place.
Okay.
And will let them know if they've come to the wrong voting precinct or if their information is not in the system.
Okay.
And perhaps allow them to have directions to go where they need to go.
Okay.
If they are in the right place, then they proceed to another officer of election who will check their name and address. And a lot of people don't know this, but it is by law that the voter has to audibly state their name and address
Oh, okay.
to the officer of election. And they will check that, see that they're in the system, give them a card to vote, and direct them toward the voting machine.
Okay.
And again, where they stand in line a few minutes we
Yeah.
hope, and are able to actually go to the machine and cast their vote.
Okay.
There's also an officer election station at the voting machine area, so that if there are questions or problems, that they have that resource available to them as well.
Oh, okay, great. Now, are these people that work at the polling places, are they volunteers, or how does that work? How do you get involved in that if you were interested?
Well, if you were interested, you'd simply call the office or obtain and submit an application.
Okay.
The officers of election are appointed by the electoral board.
Okay.
And we try to do a few things. We try to balance out the officers of election by party affiliation.
Okay.
So we also ask the chairs of the parties to submit to us people who they think would be good officers of election.
Okay.
Because we want to make sure that we not only know we're fair, that we have the appearance
Yes, absolutely.
of fairness to all of our voters.
Okay.
So these are folks who volunteer, and then they get a small stipend
Okay.
for the time they spend at the polls.
Oh, excellent. Now, I know when you get to the polls, you know, you're waiting in line. Is there any time limit when you're in that booth to decide, or is it, you know, does a bell come on, it's like, "Ah, you're done, get moving," or can you stay in there all day?
I doubt that we would allow you to stay in there all day.
Someone's going to come knocking.
However, we try to give people a reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
Our officers of election would discreetly ask if there was a need of assistance.
Okay.
If someone was taking a long time.
Got it.
Because someone may not understand the constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
They may be having trouble with the controls. And especially with new voting equipment.
Absolutely.
They may have some questions about its use. So that's part of what the officers of election are trained to do.
Okay.
Are to intervene in those kinds of circumstances. And we also have equipment that allows voters with disabilities
Oh, great.
to be independent in voting.
Okay.
We have voting equipment for the blind, which
Okay.
are, you know, audio equipment that reads out the election to them. And our officers of election can also assist folks, or people can bring somebody to help them.
Oh, great.
And folks who come to help voters with disabilities need to sign an affidavit that they will not influence them in their vote.
Oh, wow. So to make sure everything's on the up and up,
Exactly.
basically.
But as far as your original question
Yeah.
about time limits, they don't exist.
Okay.
But we do enforce a reasonable amount of time in the booth.
Good. Now, you mentioned, you know, we kind of discussed on the Board of Elections and stuff like that. Describe a little bit more for people who may not know the makeup and function of that board.
We have a 3-member board. The members are appointed by the major political parties.
Okay.
And depending on who's governor, that party has 2 members.
Okay.
And the party that does not have a governor in office has 1 member.
Okay.
The members serve for 3 years each, and they're staggered terms.
Okay.
The board is responsible for making sure that we have fair, reliable voting.
Okay.
And to do that, we're in charge of the security of equipment and the process. We appoint and train the officers of election that we just talked about. And there is an intensive training program, both online and in person here at the office,
Oh, wow.
in order to do that. We get the election results, and we do what's called a canvass to make sure that that voting is correct, and we compare all the tapes and the papers to the counts.
Yeah.
And then we send those counts to the state board.
Oh, wow.
And that's how your election gets reported.
Okay. Yeah, and so how does the electoral board differ from the registrar's office? What does, I guess, the registrar's office do that the Board of Elections doesn't?
The registrar's office, of course, has information, materials, literature that people can come in and obtain. We also have the registration application forms.
Okay.
We update your information if someone is new to the area or has a change of address, change of name. We have the registration forms for an absentee ballot application form. We have information that we are constantly updating as the rules, laws, and regulations change. So must we keep up with that.
Okay.
We gather together the information that is taken to the precincts on Election Day, so our election officials will have the proper material they need to conduct the election there. We also have the training. We conduct training prior to an election. As equipment changes, we so need to change the election officials, their standards or whatever they need to do in order to start or open up the elections for the voting machines. Like Ms. Outlaw just mentioned, we're going to be implementing new voting machines in some of our locations. So those election officials that work there will need to be trained properly on the new equipment.
Right.
As far as the electronic poll books, we have training for that. And a lot of it is refresher information. You know, some of these election officials maybe didn't work the last election, or we've changed something in the electronic poll books or updated the poll books. They need to be refreshed in that as well.
Got it.
We make sure that the information is delivered to the polling places. We have 28 precincts now that we must attend to and have the information available for them.
Great. Now what is a phone number, I guess, where they can call and contact you if they have any further questions?
The phone number here for the office is 757-514-7750.
Oh, great. And we mentioned the State Board of Elections website,
Yes.
sbevirginia.gov.
Yes, www.sbe.virginia.gov. That is correct.
Well, that's excellent. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for definitely informing us of the processes and what goes on kind of behind the scenes the day of. I know it's a long day for the both of you.
Yes.
But it's certainly a very rewarding one in the fact that, you know, our system of democracy does work. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us for this edition of On the Scene. Thanks for watching, and definitely join us next time.